Walmart quietly dropped a fresh batch of price cuts this week, and if you know where to look, some of these are cheaper right now than they've been all year. I went through the store aisle by aisle to find the 12 that are worth your attention, and by the end of this video you'll know exactly which ones to grab before the prices bounce back up. Some of these are so low they genuinely surprised me, and a couple of them tie directly into things a lot of shoppers over 60 ask about every single week. This isn't a random clearance list either. I specifically looked for markdowns on things people actually buy again and again, not one-off seasonal junk that sits in a closet after the excitement wears off. So whether you're trying to stretch a fixed monthly budget, or you're just someone who likes catching a genuinely good deal before everyone else notices it, there's something on this list for you. Stick around, because number 1 on this list is the kind of deal that doesn't come around often. If this video ends up helping you save even a little bit on your next trip, do me a favor and tap that like button before we get started. It genuinely helps this reach more people who could use it. Now let's get into number 12. Number 12 is a large container of laundry detergent, and right now it's priced noticeably below where it usually sits, close to a third off the regular shelf price. At many other grocery or drugstore chains, the same size container runs several dollars higher, which means this isn't just a small markdown, it's a real gap compared to shopping elsewhere. Doing the laundry math, a household that goes through one container a month could save close to $30 or $40 a year just from catching this specific brand at this specific price consistently. For anyone doing laundry regularly on a fixed income, detergent is one of those recurring costs that adds up quietly over a year, so catching it at a genuine low point is worth planning around. The honest downside is that store shelf space for this deal is limited, and once the current stock sells through, the price typically returns to normal rather than staying discounted. My bonus tip here is simple. If you have the storage space, buying 2 containers now rather than 1 saves you a second trip later at full price. Detergent doesn't spoil or go bad sitting in a closet, so there's genuinely no downside to buying ahead here if the price is right and you have a shelf to spare. Now let's move to number 11. Number 11 is a well-known brand of ground coffee, and it's currently marked down close to $4 off its usual price for the same size can. Coffee prices have crept up steadily over the past couple of years, so a markdown like this actually matters more than it might have a few years ago. For someone who goes through roughly a can a month, that $4 difference adds up to close to $50 over the course of a year, just from timing the purchase right instead of grabbing it at full price out of habit. If coffee is part of your daily routine, this is the kind of deal that quietly saves real money over a month, since it's something most people buy again and again rather than just once. The honest downside is that this specific markdown is tied to a limited promotional window, so it's not something you can count on being there again next month. Bonus tip: check the unit price sticker on the shelf before you grab it, since occasionally a smaller container ends up being a better deal per ounce, even with this markdown applied to the larger one. It only takes a few seconds to compare, and it's the kind of habit that quietly saves money on nearly every grocery run, not just this one. Now, number 10. Number 10 is a 12-pack of canned soup, and it's currently priced low enough that it works out to under $1 a can, which is a genuinely strong price point for a pantry staple like this. Canned soup is one of those items that makes sense to stock up on specifically because it doesn't spoil quickly. So, buying more than you need for just this week isn't wasteful the way it would be with fresh food. Compared to buying single cans throughout the month at the regular price, grabbing the full pack now at this rate can easily save several dollars over the course of a few weeks, which sounds small on its own, but adds up steadily. For anyone managing meals on a tight monthly budget, a full case at under $1 a can stretches significantly further than buying a few cans at a time throughout the month. The honest downside is that not every flavor in the line is included in this specific markdown, so it's worth checking the shelf tag flavor by flavor rather than assuming the whole section is discounted. Bonus tip: this pairs well with a discounted loaf of bread if you catch that on the same trip, since together they make an easy, low-effort lunch option. Keeping a few extra cans in the pantry also means one less thing to worry about on a week when cooking from scratch just isn't realistic. Now, number 9. Number 9 is a name brand multivitamin, and this one caught my attention because vitamins rarely go on deep markdown the way food items do. Right now it's priced several dollars below its normal shelf price for a 90-count bottle, which works out to roughly 3 months' worth at the lower price instead of paying full price bottle after bottle throughout the year. For a senior taking a daily vitamin as part of a regular routine, this is exactly the kind of recurring cost, where a markdown actually changes your monthly budget in a noticeable way, rather than just being a one-time treat purchase. The honest downside is that vitamin markdowns like this tend to happen close to the manufacturer's best-by date being several months out rather than years out. So it's still perfectly good to buy, but it isn't meant to be stockpiled 5 bottles deep. Bonus tip: check the expiration date printed on the bottle before buying more than one, and only buy as many as you'll reasonably use before that date. If you're already taking a daily vitamin from a different brand, it's worth comparing the ingredient list before switching, just to make sure this one covers the same basics you're used to. Now, Number 8. Number 8 is a 24-roll pack of paper towels, and it's marked down enough that the price per roll comes out lower than almost anything else on the shelf right now, including some of the smaller off-brand packs. Paper towels are one of those household basics that never really go away as a monthly expense, so catching a large pack at a genuinely low per-roll price is one of the more practical wins on this list, especially since most people simply grab whatever's in front of them at full price when they run out unexpectedly rather than planning ahead. The honest downside is that a pack this size takes up real storage space, so if you're working with a small kitchen or pantry, it's worth measuring your storage before committing to the full case. Bonus tip: if storage space is tight, splitting a case with a neighbor or a family member is a completely reasonable way to take advantage of the lower per-roll price without needing to store all 24 rolls yourself. Paper products like this rarely go bad, so there's really no risk in buying ahead as long as you have somewhere reasonably dry to keep them. Now, Number 7 is a 12-pack of AA batteries, and this one is worth grabbing simply because batteries rarely go on a real markdown outside of the holiday season, and this one is a genuine cut, not just a small rounding difference. Batteries are the kind of thing most people only think about buying the exact moment they run out, usually for a remote control, a flashlight, or a hearing aid accessory, which means paying full price out of urgency more often than not, sometimes for a smaller pack at a noticeably worse per unit price, simply because it was the only option left on the shelf that day. Having a small stock on hand from a real markdown means the next time something runs out of batteries in your house, you're not stuck paying whatever the regular price happens to be that day. The honest downside is that batteries do have a shelf life, generally several years, so this only makes sense to stock up on if you'll realistically use them within that window. Bonus tip: keep a small basket or drawer specifically for batteries at home so you actually use the ones you buy on sale instead of losing track of them in a junk drawer. It also helps to jot the purchase date on the pack with a marker so you have a rough sense of how old they are the next time you reach for one. Now Number 6. Number 6 is a large bag of dry dog food, and if you have a pet at home, this is one of the more meaningful markdowns on the entire list, since pet food is a recurring monthly cost that doesn't get talked about as often as groceries do, even though it adds up just as much. The current price on this bag works out to a noticeably lower cost per pound compared to its usual price, and compared to buying the same brand at a specialty pet store, the gap is even larger, sometimes several dollars per bag depending on the store. For a senior on a fixed income with a pet at home, food costs for that pet are a real part of the monthly budget, and a markdown like this genuinely helps. The honest downside is that this specific markdown applies to one bag size and one specific formula, so it's worth double-checking that it matches what your pet actually eats before assuming every bag on that shelf is included. Bonus tip: if your pet does well on this brand, buying 2 bags now while the price is down covers roughly 2 months instead of 1, saving you a second trip at full price later. Just make sure you have a sealed container or bin to keep the second bag fresh until you're ready to open it. Now, Number 5, if you've made it this far, you're already ahead of most shoppers this week, because most people only catch 2 or 3 of these markdowns by accident while walking through for something else entirely. Most shoppers simply aren't checking every aisle carefully enough to notice a price has actually dropped versus just staying the same with a bigger sale tag slapped on top of it. The next 4 deals are honestly some of the strongest on the whole list, so stick with me just a little longer. Number 5 is a set of everyday drinking glasses, sold as a boxed set of 6, and it's marked down close to half off the regular price. This isn't a food or household staple like the others on this list, but it's exactly the kind of small home item that's easy to put off buying at full price and then forget about entirely, until you're down to 2 mismatched glasses and a mug doing all the work in the cabinet. If a few glasses have chipped or gone missing from your kitchen over the past year, this is a low-pressure moment to replace them without spending much at all. The honest downside is that this specific set is a seasonal design, so once it sells out, it likely won't be restocked in the same style. Bonus tip: check the clearance end cap near the same aisle, since matching items like plates or bowls sometimes get marked down in the same seasonal clear-out. A full matching set at clearance prices can end up costing less than buying just the glasses alone at their regular price. Now, number 4. Number 4 is a large multi-pack of canned tuna, and it's priced low enough right now that it rivals some of the cheapest protein sources in the entire store per serving. Tuna is shelf-stable for years, which makes it one of the more practical pantry staples to stock up on when the price genuinely drops, rather than buying it only a can or two at a time, especially since the price on canned protein tends to creep up steadily rather than come back down once it rises. For anyone trying to stretch a grocery budget while still getting a reliable source of protein, this is one of the more useful markdowns on the whole list. The honest downside is that not every variety, like the ones packed in oil versus water, are included in the same markdown, so it's worth checking each option on the shelf individually. Bonus tip: this pairs well with the canned soup markdown from earlier in this list if you're building out a stocked pantry on this same trip. Between the two, you've got a handful of quick, shelf-stable meals covered for very little money. Now, number 3. Number 3 is a name-brand electric kettle, and this is one of the bigger markdowns on the entire list, coming in at nearly 40% off its usual price. An electric kettle is a small kitchen appliance that a lot of people don't think to replace until their old one stops working entirely, and by then you're often stuck paying full price out of necessity rather than catching a genuine deal. A kettle like this typically holds up for several years of regular daily use, so replacing an aging one now, while it's discounted, is usually a better financial move than waiting for it to fail completely and needing a same-day replacement at full price. If your current kettle is getting old or slow to heat, this is a good window to replace it before it fully breaks rather than after. The honest downside is that this markdown applies to one specific color and model, so if you have a strong preference on appearance, it's worth confirming the exact one on the shelf before assuming every version is included. Bonus tip: check that the box hasn't been opened and resealed before buying, since occasionally clearance electronics have been returned and restocked, and it's worth a quick visual check either way. It's also worth plugging it in briefly before you leave the parking lot area, if the store allows a quick test, just for peace of mind. Now, number 2. Number 2 is a large multi-pack of over-the-counter pain relief tablets, and this is one of the more genuinely useful markdowns on this entire list because it's something most households eventually need regardless of age. The current price works out to a meaningful savings compared to buying the smaller bottle at full price, and compared to a standalone pharmacy, the gap is even larger, since pharmacy counterpricing on basic pain relief tends to run noticeably higher than a big grocery aisle price. For a senior managing ongoing minor aches or stiffness, having a larger, lower-cost supply on hand rather than repeatedly buying small bottles at full price adds up over the course of a year. The honest downside is that these do have an expiration date printed on the bottle, generally a couple of years out, so it only makes sense to buy the larger size if you'll reasonably use it within that window. Bonus tip: check with your pharmacist if you're taking other regular medications, just to confirm there's no interaction concern before stocking up on a larger bottle than you're used to. It's a quick question, and pharmacists are generally happy to answer it right at the counter without an appointment. Now, the number 1 deal on this list, and it's the one I promised you at the very beginning. Number 1 is a full-size stand mixer, and this is by far the steepest markdown on the entire list, priced low enough that it's genuinely rare to see this brand and model this far below its usual cost, often close to half off compared to what it typically sells for. A stand mixer is the kind of purchase a lot of people put off for years simply because the full price feels hard to justify, even though it gets used constantly once it's actually in the kitchen. If baking or regular cooking is part of your routine, or if it's something you've been wanting to buy for a family member as a gift, this is exactly the kind of price drop that doesn't come around often. The honest downside is that at this price point, stock is genuinely limited, and once the current units sell out, there's no guarantee the price returns to this level anytime soon. Bonus tip: if you're on the fence, ask an associate whether they can check inventory at a nearby store, since a location closer to you might still have it in stock even if the shelf in front of you looks empty. A stand mixer like this holds its value well too, so even as a gift, it's the kind of purchase that tends to actually get used for years rather than sitting forgotten in a cabinet. So that's all 12. The detergent markdown saves you money on something you buy every month regardless. The coffee deal helps if it's part of your daily routine. The canned soup is about as close to risk-free stocking up as it gets. The multivitamin deal matters if you already take one daily. The paper towels are a genuine bulk win if you have the storage space. The battery pack means you're not caught paying full price the next time something dies unexpectedly. The dog food helps if you've got a pet at home relying on that exact brand. The drinking glasses are a small, low-pressure home refresh. The canned tuna rounds out a stocked, protein-friendly pantry. The electric kettle is worth it if yours is aging or already struggling. The pain relief tablets are a practical bulk buy for something most households eventually need, and that stand mixer at the very top of the list is the steepest, most limited-time deal of the entire bunch. My honest opinion is that a handful of these matter far more than the rest depending on your own household, so don't feel like you need to grab all 12 on one trip just because they made this list. If I had to pick just two to prioritize, I'd say the canned soup and the paper towels, simply because those are the two most people will actually use up before anything expires or goes out of style, which makes them close to risk-free purchases at these prices. Everything else on this list is worth grabbing too, but those two are the safest place to start if you're only making a quick trip and don't have time to think through all 12. One thing to keep in mind before you head out: markdowns like these move fast, and store inventory can vary a lot from one location to another, so what's fully stocked at one Walmart might already be picked over at another just a few miles away. Call ahead if any single item on this list is the main reason for your trip, just to save yourself a wasted drive. The one trap I genuinely warn you about is treating a low price as a reason to buy something you weren't already planning to need. Every single item on this list is worth grabbing specifically because it's something most households already use regularly, not because the discount alone makes it worth the money. A great price on something that just sits unused in a cabinet isn't really a savings at all. It's just spending with extra steps. So use this list as a guide for things you were already going to buy anyway, not as a reason to buy things you weren't. If this video helped you plan your next shopping trip, please tap that like button. It really does help this channel reach more people your age who are trying to make their budget stretch further. And if you're not subscribed yet, go ahead and do that now, because we put out a fresh list just like this one every single week, always with an honest, no-hype breakdown of what's actually worth grabbing. Turning on notifications helps too, since a couple of these deals only last a few days, and I don't want you finding out about a great price a week too late. Before you go, I'd love to know which of these 12 you're most excited to grab this week. Drop the number in the comments below. I read every single one, and it genuinely helps decide what we cover in next week's video. If you've already spotted a great markdown of your own that isn't on this list, mention that too, since a lot of what ends up in future videos actually starts as a tip left in the comments on an earlier one. And if someone in your life, a parent, a neighbor, a friend, could use this list too, sending it their way costs nothing and might genuinely help their budget this month. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, and I will see you in the next one.